Welcome back to a busy Fujitsu Forum 2019. It's been a busy couple of days. We've had guests from over 80 countries descend on Munich this week. And it just underlines the importance of the information coming out of Fujitsu, the technology that's being produced and the innovation being driven by the smart people at Fujitsu. Technology has the ability to address so many challenges, both within business and society, but a key question being asked, when it comes to AI, are we doing enough ethically? Well, that's where we're going to take our next conversation. I'm delighted to say, fresh from delivering one of the interactive breakout sessions that guests get to avail of at Fujitsu Forum, we got a brilliant panel of people. I'm joined by Professor Christoph Lüttiker, who's the director of TUM Institute for Ethics in Artificial Intelligence Tech, University of Munich, familiar face from Fujitsu World Tour London. We're also joined by Kathy Mulligan, who's the CTO for Public Sector here at Fujitsu, Yoshikuni Takeshige, who's the Chief Strategist at Fujitsu, and another familiar face, David Gentle, Director of Strategy and Foresight. Thank you all for coming and joining us. David, let's start with you. Tell us about the breakout session and some of the big questions that were being asked.
Yeah, sure. So we had this session this morning. So this was our panel on the session, and the session was titled AI and Ethics: The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So what we were trying to do is just get to sort of a warts and all view of AI and ethics, and really to just paint a picture of what are the issues, what are the risks, what are the opportunities, how do people feel, and what steps should organisations take. So we sort of covered this kind of broad area. One thing we started with that was really fantastic was that we asked the audience some ethical questions, and we got the audience to hold up cards, red for yes, so green for yes, red for no, and we asked them things like, would you trust AI to drive your car? Would you trust AI to find your life partner? Would you trust AI to perform your performance appraisal at work? And we got some interesting answers back. So probably about 50% of the audience felt they would trust AI to drive a car. About 50% felt they would, surprisingly, trust AI to find a life partner. On the job appraisal, maybe only 20% felt they could trust. So that's how we set things in motion, and then we went into the panel and we got some of the insights of these guys. So it's a very engaging session. It was excellent.
Sounds really insightful. I guess AI is clearly one of those technologies that's going to be transformational for us. I don't think there's anyone that would argue otherwise, but how do we balance the impact with the risk of uncontrolled AI? Professor Lüttiker, what do you think?
Yes, for me, it's not so much about just balancing. Every technology has a positive and a negative side, but for AI, it's a particular problem because, as I like to say, AI will not fly without ethics, which means that if we don't have ethical rules for those technologies, for data collection, for surveillance, for image processing and so on, for face recognition, then the citizens will just not use the technology. They will just not accept it. And that's why companies will have to make sure they integrate ethical considerations right from the start into their products.
What do you think?
Yeah, I would like to add that the technology is neither good nor bad. But the AI has a substantial, potential to give impact, which is both positive and negative at the same time. So we face certain dilemmas. So we want to develop AI, but also we have to take care of bad sides. So ethics comes in very important. So to overcome that, it is very important for many stakeholders to have open discussion. What is right and necessary for our common society?
While I've got you all, I want to talk about the G7 summit. We know the EU they've called for more investment and cooperation to manufacture ethical AI. How important is it that we get a legal framework, or isn't it important? What do we think?
So I think it's very important to get some framework there. I was just yesterday in the European Parliament when we presented the ethical guidelines for AI governance, actually, in which from the organization is AI for People, but Fujitsu was actually heavily involved in it. And it's very interesting to see. We will need to create a framework At some point, will definitely also be a legal framework, but for the moment, I think we also need much more research before we get to that. So for the moment, I think an ethical framework, ethical guidelines for companies is a very important element of that.
How concerned should we be about the unethical use of AI? I think the week of Fujitsu World Tour London, there was quite a high-profile example in America where a young male had wrongly been identified as a criminal in an Apple store. It hit the radar of senators for good reason. How concerned should we be of unethical AIs? What do you think, Kathy?
Yeah, I think we should be really concerned about the concept of ethical AI within society, mainly because it is we're at an inflection point where technology is having a very profound impact on our society, our lives, and our economy. And when technology has such a big role, then we really need to think quite deeply about what it actually means and how we should think about doing it. The other thing we need to think through quite deeply is who decides what is right. So when we talk about ethics, we really need to understand who is making those ethical decisions on our behalf and how they're being made and enacted within the technology. So, for example, explainable AI is quite a useful technique to allow humans to understand how a decision has been made.
Shikini, I'm keen to understand, what are the main questions that need to be raised when we're building an AI? If we're at sort of ground zero, what should we be asking?
Yeah, probably I want to talk about some approach for the trusted business using the SQL AI. There are three key steps. The first, the set out purpose. So design the purpose-driven project. The second, the be human-centric. So Fujitsu has long been emphasizing our human-centric vision. It simply means putting people at the center of everything. This principle, we believe, is very, very important for any AI-based project. And third, technology comes in. Drive your business with trusted AI. So we are developing trusted AI technology, including explainable AI and the accountable AI and robust quality AI.
Professor Ludiger, ethics by design, can that be competitive at a European or global level?
Well, that is the $1 million question for the next time. I believe there is a genuine chance for something like trustworthy AI or ethical AI or good AI, whatever you call it, to be kind of European trademark. And something that customers also in other regions of the globe would like to adopt. But it requires, of course, a lot from the companies in order to establish that. And then, yes, I think it can indeed be competitive as other products have also been, which just are more trusted than others.
Kathy, the theme of this year's Fujitsu Forum's driving a trusted future. Have we rushed into AI a little too quickly without having the right framework in place? Does that cause a bit of skepticism?
Yeah, I think it's an important point to understand. Technology always runs a little bit ahead of regulation, and I think we're seeing that potentially in some areas AI is a little bit ahead of the regulatory curve. And so, having it up on the EU sort of level discussion is really where it needs to be. So I think too early out, technology is always a little bit too early for regulation. But now is the point in time where regulators at both a national, regional, and also a global level need to interact with one another and cooperate around how those frameworks can interact.
I'm keen to get an opinion from each of you on this. Over the next 12 to 24 months, where are we going? What are we going to see? David, let's start with you.
So I think we're going to see two things. I think we're going to see some more scandals. I think we're going to see some more issues where ethics haven't been correctly applied. But I think at the same time, I think we're going to see a lot more kind of embedding of AI in everyday technologies, in our cars, in our homes, in the software code that we use online on our phones. So one or two maybe big stories, but behind it, a lot of adoption.
Yeah, so I personally think there's going to be, on the back of all of this adoption, I think insurance companies are going to start to look at how different companies should be managing and controlling for risk around this. And once we understand how risk is controlled, managed and paid for, we'll start to see a little bit of self-regulation as well. That was my thoughts.
Well, I think that in the coming 2 years, AI will advance more rapidly and will be deployed in many places, in many sectors. But what this means for business is that every business leader must be an ethical leader. Otherwise, we cannot handle this advance of AI.
Interesting.
So I would say we will see, well, definitely advancements in the technology. Well, this is for sure. What we will also see is the adoption of more guidelines in terms of ethics and governance for these technologies, both from governments as well as from companies, I believe. What we will also see is some companies will probably fail or face their downfall because they just do not adopt to the new environment. And what we'll finally also see, I believe, is that people, citizens, users, will get probably a little more relaxed about the use of AI, and some of that uproar that we have heard during the last month will probably get a little more quiet. Still there, of course, we need to have the criticism, but maybe in a more relaxed way.
Fascinating stuff indeed. I could talk about this for another half an hour, but we're out of time. We've still got plenty more insight coming your way this afternoon. We're on air till about 4:45 this afternoon, top of the hour and half past the hour. Next, we're going back to the co-creation team. We're asking a key question: what the heck has mainframe got to do with digital transformation? Well, up next, we're going to answer that. Stay with us.